So after I put my blood, sweat, and tears into that Spider-Man rankings video, someone commented, "Hey Blank Boy, you should do this for the entire MCU." And at first I laughed it off, like how one might do at the Washington Wizards fans saying they finna win the championship. But the more and more I thought about it, I'm like, wait,
that's a great idea.
This would be a perfect build up to Avengers Doomsday. And the way I'ma do it is because there's 37 of these movies, and because I don't want to be here till I look like Morgan Freeman for literally his entire life, first nigga ever who was never young, we're gonna split these movies into parts, each part being a different phase of the MCU. So naturally, unless you're Patrick Star, you'd know Phase 1 is up first. The tier list itself will of course carry over from video to video, and by the end we'll have a fully complete list. Iron Man 1, B tier. Iron Man 1 does an amazing job establishing Tony's character off rip. Nigga in Afghanistan showing off his bombs to boom Middle Easterns. This movie is so 2000s, and I just know Obama was watching like... While they're driving Tony to the site, he's being the ultimate rich, snobby asshole. He talks to his soldiers like they're little children, belittling them, and is even just straight up misogynistic to the woman soldier who's driving. He was in that hole sounding like Donald Trump. He literally says, "Yeah, I love peace. I'd be out of job without peace." He's quite literally making a joke about how he makes millions off turning Middle Eastern babies and grandmas into meatballs with his weapons he sells. He's showing the new Boom Every Afghanistan Person 3000 and is quite literally posing, emoting in front of the explosion. It's all just one big spectacle to him. There's no care. The reporter literally calls him the Merchant of Death and he says he likes the name. He receives a Lifetime Achievement Award and doesn't even show up to the ceremony to receive it. Instead, he's gambling, and when Rhodey picks it up for him, he hands it off to some random nigga. He's all about vanity, no sense of responsibility at all, and also has this twisted sense of morality where he genuinely believes he's some sort of hero. He somehow takes credit for medical advancements because of the military funding they're receiving. That's like me giving my homie $500 to buy a PC. He works hard as hell, becomes the next Kai Cenat, and then I'm like, "Hey nigga, you know that was all me, right?" But it's when they get snuck, hit with a drive-by like it's O-Block, and Tony presumably for the first time sees what his weapons cause firsthand against himself, suffering his chest injury and getting kidnapped by the enemies. Sometimes it takes experiencing what you've been doing for years to give you some perspective. So y'all, if you want to change your abusive partner, start beating that nigga back, trust. It was all cool for him when he was selling the weapons and didn't actually have to see the results of them. But now he's shaking like Courage the Cowardly Dog, looking like a nigga who said, "Oh God, watch what happened when I see him, I'm swinging." Eyes open like golf balls. They do an amazing job of stripping Tony down from all the fame, the fortune, the glaze, and his big ego in order for him to get to a point where he could be introspective while not being so distracted by the cars and broke niggas begging for money, so now he can rediscover himself. And I think using a scenario like this where he's kidnapped and has his own weapons used against him is a genius way of doing that. Other MCU movies have attempted this sort of thing like Deadpool and Wolverine, where they strip everything away from the character, but it's situations like, "Oh, the universe is gonna get destroyed." Of course it is, nigga, of course. That is just so basic. Here they do it with Tony in such an ironic and cathartic way. It's perfect, giving Tony the opportunity to self-reflect for maybe the first time in his life. Yinsen literally says he's a man who has everything but has nothing. Nigga 40 with no wife, no kids, living this future lifestyle. It's also Yinsen who gives Tony a pep talk after it's clear that Tony has accepted his death. So Tony locks in and lies to Walmart Osama, telling him he'll build the missile they want him to, but instead he builds the Mark I, where we get to see a demonstration of his insane intellect and engineering skills. He has a gift, but just was putting it to bad use. It's like dudes who use their 4.4 speed to rob niggas. The MCU always does a great job showing Tony Stark is very smart. It's not like any of us can fact check that nigga anyways while he talking, making the Mark I and deep frying all of them. I know that bitch smelled like fried chicken. He had the 10 Rings troops asking Walmart Osama, "What should we do?" And bro was like,
"We need some help from the Lord. We need some help from the Lord."
Tony escapes, losing Yinsen in the process. The plan was for both of them to escape. Tony had even put his life on the line to save Yinsen. The first time he probably ever did that in his entire life. Probably the only selfless thing he's done in the 40 years he's been alive. And now Yinsen is gone. But meeting Yinsen as well as the kidnapping circumstances work as the catalyst for Tony's change as a person. Tony telling Yinsen thank you for saving him, and Yinsen's dying words being "don't waste your life," sticks with Tony. That's the exact same line I used on my obese homie as I passed him the chips he asked for. And he destroys all of his old weapons on the way out, destroying the old Tony in a way. And watching the change he goes through is great. The literal first thing he does fresh off landing back in America is call a press conference and tells the entire world how he saw American troops get blasted with his own weapons, how he became part of a system that held no self-accountability, and announces he's shutting down Stark Industries making weapons. It is a little on the nose, I feel. Like in the Planet of the Apes review, which is back up by the way, go check it out please, I mentioned how great writing can tell you changes in a character without them actively having to say it. There's so many scenes where Caesar's going through an internal development that's delivered with zero dialogue, and it hits more to come to that conclusion yourself, in my opinion. Like take the scene where Caesar's facing off against the Colonel. He doesn't have to say, I was hateful to you because you killed my family, but I am letting go of that. We understand that. We get that through Caesar's actions of not killing the Colonel. Meanwhile here, Tony Stark literally says, I saw what my weapons could do and how they kill people. I saw the damage that my weapons caused. I no longer want them to do that. My eyes have been opened and I am shutting down Stark weapons industry. It's just very explained to you, and I just feel like such an important character moment like this doesn't have to be told to me like I'm a child. It's not a bad way of doing it per se, but I just think things like this is what separates a movie that is written amazingly versus a movie that's written good. It's Tony's first heroic moment, if you want to say. He says how he doesn't want a body count to be their legacy, and he no longer believes the lies they told themselves. Like when Obi tries to talk him out of it, saying that what they do saves the world from chaos, Tony literally says,
Into chaos, not based on what I saw.
Tony wants to do good. He wants his legacy to be that of good, and nobody around him accepts that. Even Rhodey turns his back on Tony. He can't trust anyone anymore. But despite all the negativity thrown towards him, Tony stands 10 toes down on his morals and doesn't waver for anyone, making the Mark II and III in order to, in his own words, do some good. It's another great display of the person Tony has now become. It's pretty cool seeing how he's separated from his company, basically frozen out like they did that nigga Norman. But the thing is, Tony's still getting blamed by the public for the thing that's happening in Middle East. Tony Stark Industries has been double dealing in the Middle East, which Tony finds out about and makes it his mission to seek out and destroy any weapons that have been sold under the table, under his nose, to protect people from them. The character that Tony starts this movie as is not someone you would ever expect who would act directly against his company's best interests profitably in order to do the right thing. It's a pretty engaging plot to me, and it's where the movie goes from origin setup to rising action / climax superhero movie. The scene with him going over to the Middle East to destroy the weapons and fight them, it's cool. I mean, it's literally like a 15-second fight, so I'm not gonna lie, it's tight mid. I was being nice. There's also a lot of political implications from Tony interfering with the war unauthorized. You gotta get clearance from the US military before you kill niggas, so that causes conflict, and I was intrigued. The plot is good. Probably the absolute weakest part of this movie is the villains. I don't know anything about Obi except that he knew Tony's dad. He's kind of a creepy unk figure and really wants the company to keep making weapons and wants to own the company. He's part of the world that Tony is leaving behind, and it's kind of symbolic of Tony defeating him. It's almost like he's physically punching away a representation of his past. The convo they have after Tony was at the press conference, like, hey, all the blueprints we have for weapons, I'm gonna need y'all all to... That convo really just shows the slimy, grimy nigga Obi is. Aside from a few moments here and there, you don't really know much about him, and then so, I don't really care that much about him. The conflict between them just felt like it was there because it's a superhero movie and we need a supervillain. He's like Norman Osborn, Green Goblin type of character, but without any of the substance and like charisma and like interest. Like, I understand he wants the company for himself, but that does just seem like really weak reasoning for him to be this fucking evil. Like, he's like super evil. Tony is damn near like a son to him, someone he's nurtured for 30 years. You're already filthy rich, but you ready to slime him out so easily because you want the company to yourself? Like, really? That's it? I was just way more interested in the character study aspects of Tony Stark and him in the montages of him becoming Iron Man, rather than the conflict between him and Obi or the Ten Rings, who are even less interesting. They feel like they're only in this movie so that Tony could get a chance to show off the capabilities of the Mark III, straight plot devices, Draymond Green characters, set screens, and play defense, niggas. I don't even remember the leader of the Ten Rings name, and I watched the movie an hour ago at the time of writing this. I just know he's trying to cause havoc, but that's literally it. I will say I did think the reveal that Obi was the one who had Tony kidnapped and tried to get him killed was surprising. I haven't seen this movie since 2008 in theaters, so I was damn near seeing it for the first time when I rewatched it, and that surprised me. I thought that was cool. And he also does give Tony the ultimate aura lob ever.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a bunch of scraps.
Another weak point for me is probably the fights. I just don't think Iron Man action scenes in this movie are that great. The final battle is pretty weak in my opinion. Obi stomps him out, throws cars at him. Tony tries to bait him by flying into the sky, freezing his suit, and ultimately wins by blasting him off the roof. It's more so a strategic fight than it is like them actually boxing, and that's just not as fun to watch for me. The fight also doesn't get much out of me emotionally because narratively I don't care about their personal conflict all that much because the villain is trash. I mean, this right here straight up looks like some Power Rangers shit. The effects in this movie are dated as hell, but I get it, you know? It's okay. It's a 2008 movie. But when you have weak visuals, weak narratives behind the fight, weak choreography, it just doesn't make for good fights. The movie does have heart, which I can appreciate, especially between Tony and Pepper. Like when she helps him take out his arc reactor, she asks him what should I do with the old one, and he tells her to throw it out, but instead she frames it with the wording, proof Tony Stark has a heart. And later when Obi takes his new arc reactor to power his Ironmonger suit, it's that same old arc reactor that she kept despite him telling her to get rid of it that saves his life. So stuff like that give the movie a lot of heart. Ultimately, I think Iron Man is a solid MCU movie. I think B tier is more than fair. I don't think it's peak like some people do, because to me there are important factors that the movie has as its weaker points and holds it back. I think the first half, where it's a more Tony Stark character study, is by far the best of the movie. And then the second half, when they try to set up Obi as a villain into the final battle and with the Middle East and the company stuff, that part is a lot less interesting to me. But it's a good movie, no doubt. It's not bad. B tier is cool. The Incredible Hulk, C tier. The Incredible Hulk is hated. Niggas be treating this movie like it's Captain Marvel. Do I think it's a great movie? No, not at all. But it's not awful. I think it's fun. But maybe I'm just easy, because any big Marvel fan will take any Hulk content you can see at this point. One thing I don't like about this movie is, as far as Google told me, it is not connected to the 2003 movie. It is a reboot, which means they decided to not only skip over but completely ignore Bruce Banner's past in this film. I understand for characters like Spider-Man and Batman skipping the backstory, but on the big screen a lot of people aren't even aware of Bruce's home life when he was a little kid. They skipped over how his dad was doing him like this.
Nigga, did I just catch you having fun?
And how he watched his father kill his mother, he and her obviously being victims of domestic abuse. This isn't something explored a lot about Hulk outside of the comic, so it seemed like a weird thing to find necessary to skip over to me. If even just a 10-minute segment dedicated to it would have been good. Cause listen, I'm not about to pretend to be a Hulk expert who scoured through millions of comics, because gun to the back of my head, nigga, I cannot name 5 Hulk comics, okay? But I do understand that Hulk's trauma from his childhood is super important, because it's a core traumatic event that shapes the Hulk / Bruce Banner psychology. The Hulk persona in a lot of iterations existed even before the gamma radiation accident, from a repressed frustration and anger from a young Bruce who was unable to stop his father. And then the accident literally spawns that monster he's created to protect himself into real life. But obviously this movie said,
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So it just starts with Bruce in South America hitting these dance moves running from the military. I don't mind them skipping over the gamma radiation accident itself, but I do think it was necessary to mention his childhood, because as someone who is younger myself, I can tell you a lot of people in my age range don't understand the complexity of the Hulk character because it isn't really shown in TVs or movies that much. Niggas is not reading comics. For me, I think that leads to my other flaw of this movie, is the quality of the movie when it's not a Hulk action movie. When it's a Hulk action movie, that's when the movie's at its best. And that's why I do like this movie, cause I'm down to watch Hulk being Hulk and smashing shit. The many different fights between Hulk and the military as they're chasing him are fire. Even when he's Bruce and they're chasing him, it's tough. Of course, the fight between him and Abomination are dope. Like when this movie is doing all of that, it's good. When it's a Hulk action thriller movie, it's at its best. There's this man on the run concept that the movie constantly follows as Bruce is trying to put his personal life back together because it's in pieces ever since he became the Hulk, and all of that is good. The problem is, whenever the movie tries to have substance at all, it all feels flat to me. When it's just Bruce Banner being Bruce Banner, there isn't much interest for me. And that was intentional by the studio. After the 2003 movie, which was a more cerebral approach to the psychology behind Hulk, Marvel in 2008 said, fuck all that, we just trying to reignite interest in the Hulk and finna do it in a cool way. Any character analysis we could sprinkle in, I guess we'll do so. So I think that's where the major divide between audiences for this movie come from. There's a certain section that's okay with kind of just turning their brain off and watching the Hulk on the run fighting the military and fighting the Abomination. Nigga so ugly his supervillain name is a synonym for Chop. The movie feels very Bayverse Transformers in that sort of way. It even kind of looks like it. And then there's this other side of people who really wanted an introspective movie and need some substance to be able to enjoy. They can't just watch mindless Hulk action. And neither sides are wrong, I just think this movie only does one of those well, so the polarizing nature of this movie makes sense. But I think objectively, when you're judging the movie as a whole, you do have to acknowledge it does make a much weaker origin movie compared to Iron Man or, spoiler alert, Captain America 1, because those movies have a much more balanced approach. I know a lot of nostalgia merchants glaze Edward Norton, you probably also think Bill Russell the GOAT, but I think someone like Mark Ruffalo's take on the character is much better. Specifically in 2012 Avengers, let me be very clear. Anything regarding Hulk after Age of Ultron is a giant pile of DDG music. Mark Ruffalo in Avengers 2012 gives off that perfect shy, timid scientist with a dark secret past way more than Edward Norton does in my opinion. This isn't some great performance he's doing, it's kind of just Edward Norton being a regular dude and saying smart things every now and then, but he isn't embodying some sort of specific character. He does go, stop, I don't want to hurt you, I don't want to transform, to people not trying to turn into the Hulk, but for me to give Hulk some credit as a character in this movie, they do a good job of showing the constant struggle of having to conceal the Hulk constantly, the struggle to stay calm. They literally dedicate a montage to him trying different techniques. Don't try watching Arsenal play, bro. That's the complete opposite of calming. And they also do touch on some of the nuances of Bruce Banner through his relationship with Betty. When he's spawn camping her like Joe Goldberg, you can see how desperate he is for intimate human connection, especially with Betty. He can't be with her because he knows how much of a danger it is, but wants to so bad. So you do get moments like that get into the emotional struggle behind managing the Hulk, so some of it is there, but it's definitely on the back burner for what is an on-the-run action film. I feel like anyone calling this film some deep Hulk introspective movie is kind of reaching. Imagine me trying to give the Mario movie depth because Luigi got his courage at the end. Like, let's be serious, my nigga. The villain being the Abomination is cool. Again, like the Hulk, there's not much depth, but hey, a badass motherfucker willing to face off versus the Hulk doing cool shit is sometimes good enough as a villain. In Iron Man, it's more of an issue because the movie does really get into Tony Stark's character, so to have a villain so lacking of character throws off the feel of the movie for me. But here we have a badass action movie and the villain kinda suits that, so fuck it, I'm along for the ride. It's hard to really get in my review bag with this movie cause the nature of the film, but yeah, The Incredible Hulk is not a bad movie. I think C tier is fair. It's not a bad movie, it's hype, it has great action, some character work here and there, and ultimately it's a good time. Iron Man 2, C tier. Iron Man here is an established hero, no longer an origin story. Now he's fully been Iron Man for some time. The world is experiencing its longest period of peace because of him, and he's soaking in all the glaze for doing such a great job. As well as his new big announcement, the Stark Expo, which is a place featuring high-tech military hardware for global innovation. He finna fund my genius idea of a device that plays rod wave globally, so the crippled will get up and turn it off, curing disabilities. You're welcome. But despite his good, the government is on his dick because they saying he got an unauthorized nuclear weapon in the Iron Man suit. And they want him to turn it over, pushing the propaganda that the Iron Man suit is a sword that Tony's trying to paint as a shield. And he says no, I am the suit is me. He believes that this burden of responsibility, he has to endure it on his own. He literally says, I privatized world peace.
I have successfully privatized world peace.
And while there's no issues with his actions here at all, he did the right thing. No, y'all cannot have my suits. You can have this middle finger instead. It does set the groundwork for what the movie goes on to show is a flaw in Tony's character, being that he refuses to not take all the responsibility on his own shoulders. Him not accepting help from the government is fine because they don't actually want to help. They want to take his suits and they threaten to so many times. But there's people around him that care about him, can help, and we do get to see the shift he goes through from a lone wolf to trusting people and companionship. Throughout the movie, you see how Tony is initially very reluctant to share his technology with anyone, but throughout the events in the movie, that causes a shift in him when he realizes he has to. Like the palladium poisoning that is occurring in his heart, and he won't even tell Pepper about it at first. Tony matures by accepting the need for partnerships, specifically like with Rhodey giving him a suit to help, with S.H.I.E.L.D. letting Black Widow and Nick Fury help him with his poisoning. He promotes Peggy to the CEO of Stark Industries, and acknowledges the necessity for others in his life by the end of the movie. And that's about the only character arc I can really point to regarding Tony in this movie. This movie does not have the tight character narrative around Tony that the first one has, and that's okay. He is who he is for the most part at this point. Not every movie does he have to be a different nigga, but the other aspects of the movie have to be locked in, and they just aren't. This is a very overstuffed movie with underdeveloped aspects in every other area other than just a character arc for Tony. Like, there's hints at other character work in there. There's the fact that the world starts to question, can Iron Man save us, because he struggled versus Whiplash in the first fights, which eats at his ego, as well as the fact that he's actively dying and he becomes self-destructive in nature to cope with it. But all of that is very minimal. It's not developed. It really comes out of nowhere. 1 second he's responsible, Tony, from the end of Iron Man 1. Then he realizes he's gonna die. And then literally that same night, he's a self-destructive maniac, fighting his homie and destroying his house in a house party in the process. And it got no time to really cook, serving straight white people chicken. And honestly, the overall point of egomaniac to caring about others in a way, you can say it's just repeated from the first movie anyways. And I think it's because this movie had the Spider-Man 3 treatment. It wanted to stuff Tony being poisoned to death, the government trying to take his suit and the conflict with them, Whiplash wanting revenge on him, Justin Hammer's Dinkelberg-ass rivalry with him. They try to sneak in some childhood trauma dealing with storyline, the S.H.I.E.L.D. introduction to the movie clearly setting up the Avengers movie. Nick Fury drops in, you get 15 minutes of exposition dump from him and then dips from the movie, and it just leaves so little room for compelling character writing. Speaking of character writing, the villains, absolute trash. Why should that be him though? No emotional weight, the movie just started.
Who are these niggas?
Okay, he's a really good mechanic and is obsessed with Tony Stark, but I don't really know anything else about Whiplash. The nigga pulls up to Monaco during the race trying to kill Tony in the most public setting ever. And it's like, even if you did get Tony, what was the plan after that? He says he did his job, showing the world that Tony Stark is vulnerable and that was his goal. But nigga, we 40 minutes into the movie and you presented him as the villain. We're 40 minutes in and there has quite literally been 4 Whiplash scenes, of which only one of them he actually spoke. And we are supposed to come out of that feeling something towards him or feel something about his plan to make Tony look weak so others could come after him? What type of fucking plan is that? You just want Tony to look weak so people then try to fight him? Weak ass supervillain plan. He also mentions that Tony's family has done things to him that caused death. So I guess Tony gotta die for things his parents did, despite him doing better now. It's very weak character motivations from him individually. And then there's his teammate Justin Hammer, who is just as whack. The best way I can describe Justin Hammer is he feels like he's a parody of Tony Stark. He wants to be Tony Stark, but is horrible at it. He won't shut the fuck up. He's not witty, he's just annoying, he's irritating. And we know absolutely nothing about him, about his story at all. You can't have a villain who's a boring personality and lacks any substance to their backstory. That isn't even a character at this point. He's just a Tony clone, but a bad one. He has Hammer Industries, rips off Tony's name. He He is the rich douchebag, except his character lacks any of the charisma. He's supposed to be a brilliant engineer, but half his shit don't work. The girl he shows up with during the Grand Prix is even a woman that Tony has dated in the past. He views him and Tony as equals, and Tony doesn't react to that nigga at all. He doesn't respect him at all. It just leaves him to come across like a bitter fan for the entire movie. Like, goddamn, Justin, bro, you obsessed with Tony, gang?
Get off that nigga dick, bro. What is you doing?
He gives off a bit of Syndrome vibes from The Incredibles, to be honest. His dialogue and acting is laughably bad, the least convincing villain ever.
That's how I feel.
Sweet ass nigga sound like he wouldn't hurt an ant. Then when you put him and Whiplash together, they have no chemistry, have no intimidation factor, have no interesting motives. They don't establish their characters well at all. Like, there's this scene where Justin is showing Whiplash the different things he's made, and basically Whiplash is easily able to hack into the software mainframe without having clearance. It's supposed to be a scene that's showing his intellect, but look how it's presented. Just this nigga stuttering the whole time while he types and says words we can't understand. And that's how all of their interactions are presented. He's talking while he's not saying anything or even reacting most times. How's that supposed to be an interesting dynamic? The whole time Justin is promising this deal to him, we don't even know what Whiplash is thinking. We don't know what he's actually planning, his goals, why he's willing to do this. No exaggeration, nothing. And the same goes for Justin. An hour in, they team up, and we still have no idea why he wants to fund Whiplash building this technology. Like, not a single second is dedicated to establishing that. We're left to just assume, and I assumed maybe he wants Tony dead or he wants the technology to be able to make his company profit. Like, I don't know, nigga, I'm genuinely guessing. It isn't until the halfway point of the movie we get a slight glimpse of why Justin is doing this in the first place.
Stark Expo, I want to take a dump in Tony's front yard.
Is this nigga serious?
Wow, what an interesting and complex villain we got here, while Whiplash just becomes a soldier past this point. Mind you, while all of this is happening too, they are basically having no interactions with Tony himself throughout the movie. Ultimately, the characters here just feel very flat, lacking any substance or story to them at all, while also having very confusing character motives and actions. Confusing because it either makes no sense, or they just don't care to explain it in any way, so you're just left to guess. The movie's pacing is also way off. The first 40 minutes of this movie has some substance, but it's also all over the place and hectic. And then the second 40 has nothing of substance at all, is slow and just boring, till you get to the last 20 minutes. Neither portions are done well, but shit, at least I'll take the first section and the third section of the movie way more so over the second one, cause I was actually entertained by the bullshit they was cooking up, nonetheless of it being bullshit. One thing I will for sure give this movie is the action is way better than the first movie, and that's a big positive. Tony versus Whiplash during the Grand Prix, where the niggas was watching cars go in circles for hours, was fire. Tony versus Rhodey at his crib, where he really dropped off his mans to impress everybody, was cool. Black Widow and Happy versus the Hammer soldiers while they were breaking in at the end was tough. Tony versus the Hammer drones with Rhodey is genuinely one of the coolest Iron Man fight scenes of all time. They snapped on that. The final Whiplash fight was super anticlimactic because it was over in 10 seconds, but even that was cool. The romance that was such a strong point between Pepper and Tony in the first movie is quite literally non-existent here. They're not on screen much together, and when they are, they're only ever arguing, which sucks, because their relationship is one of the best parts about the first movie. Ultimately, Iron Man 2 isn't a bad movie. It isn't no D tier or F tier. Those are bad to horrible movies. It's something I can turn on in the background and half pay attention to and have a good time somewhat. And that's the same kind of way I feel about the Hulk. It doesn't really push Iron Man forward as a character at all. The villains are forgettable. The biggest significance of this movie is the setup for Avengers. Nothing else in the movie actually matters. Well, I guess Tony also gets his new arc reactor. Those are the only two things from this movie that actually makes this movie existing worth it. It doesn't do anything great outside of the action, but it also doesn't do anything egregiously bad either. Thor, D tier. Now you know a movie is truly buns when you didn't like it as a kid. because as a kid, everything is absolutely peak, especially action movies. You couldn't tell me Michael Bay wasn't Christopher Nolan for those Transformers movies. So going into this movie, I didn't really remember it. All I remembered was that I just didn't like it when I first watched it when I was like 8 years old. And shit, was little me correct. Couldn't tie my shoes, couldn't make my own sandwich, but I could tell when Marvel was trying to serve me some bullshit. My biggest issue with this movie is it's just a fucking boring movie, man. Phase 1 got some mid, like the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, but I never once while watching those movies felt the urge to turn them off, ever. Thor 1 was a struggle to get through. Felt like I was dragging my tongue through wood chips, just pure pain every second the shit was on. I think the large issue I got with this movie is the setting. You have cool ass Asgard, the most unique setting in Phase 1 that you could possibly conjure up, but you want to have most of the movie take place in fucking New Mexico? Are you serious? It felt like I was watching Breaking Bad.
You're goddamn right.
Even if you wanted to send Thor to Earth to learn his lesson, why the fuck would you choose a setting that is just a desert? The setting is a huge part of movies, and they chose to have this setting where there's literally nothing happening, just fucking sand. I don't care for the Thor character arc in this movie at all. It's literally the Iron Man 1 arc, but with Thor. Vanity, ego, selfishness, power hungry, and then loses everything, which gives him the humility, the ability to self-reflect and eventually become worthy of Mjolnir in the end. Spoiler alert, Thor goes through this exact same arc 4 more times in the MCU. And I have 2 issues with that in regard for this movie. For one, I think it's lame to just copy the same arc, but if you're gonna do the shit, at least make it entertaining. Iron Man 1 had an engaging plot around Tony's character, including his change. Here, all the conflict is going on Asgard without Thor. He's in New Mexico with Jane, this old ass nigga, and I forgot the other girl's name. While Jane's trying to figure out some scientific stuff that I don't remember, and he's trying to figure out how to get home. That's all he's doing. None of the conflicts actually involve Thor, and what he's doing on Earth is super mundane and dry. My other issue is, why do this approach at all? It felt like because Thor is so strong, they struggled to think of anything outside of, hey, let's take away his powers. But that's a weak ass writing excuse. If Superman can have an interesting character journey while having his powers the whole time, Thor can fucking do that too. Like, you can't do both. You can't take away Thor's cool ass powers for the whole movie and his arc was boring as fuck without the powers. It just makes for a trash movie. The editing in this movie is super weird, which normally isn't something I even notice, but they cut this movie together like a SpongeBob cartoon. They edited Thor like when SpongeBob goes, "Hey Patrick, I know what we're gonna do today," and then literally the next scene is them fucking with Squidward. Like, look at how they edited this scene. Look at this.
No, I know that. The only way to ensure this.
No troll, I did absolutely nothing to that clip right there. That's how it naturally is. It is so clear that those were 2 different takes that they stuffed together. There's also very weird looking angles the camera takes that are constantly tilted, like every other shot is tilted. And I don't know for the life of me why. The thing is too, the movie starts kind of strong. Thor convinces his homies to go die with him. They go to Jotunheim because he want to get back on the Frost Giants. And I actually think that part of the movie is solid. His friends nearly fucking die, and he reignites the war between the Asgardians and the Jotuns. That works as a great catalyst to him losing all respect from his dad and needing to do some self-reflection before he's truly worthy of becoming the king of Asgard. It leads to the falling out of his father and him. They start arguing like young niggas having a LeBron versus Jordan debate with they unk. Thor wants to show everyone how strong Asgard is and views Odin's way as weak, and he banishes him in a truly dramatic scene. It's all actually pretty good. The Frost Giants are genuinely intimidating. There was real tension and worry I felt because Thor's crew began to get outnumbered. The scene where Odin steps in to save them, has a conversation with the leader, is a good piece of dialogue, and the movie lightly places clues that Loki might be a Frost Giant or at least working in cahoots with them, giving you as an audience member something to chew on the back of your mind while all of this is happening. The issue is, that's the first fucking 20 minutes of the movie, and then the movie nosedives into random science hoopla with Jane Foster and 2 hours of these niggas being like, oh my god, this guy is crazy, he thinks he's the real Thor, on some Buzz Lightyear and Woody shit from Toy Story 1. as the movie just goes back and forth between Loki bitching and turning Asgard upside down, tormenting them people. The movie follows the rule, tell over show every chance they get. Quite literally, everything in this movie is just exposition dumped to you. And listen, having characters explain things isn't inherently an issue, but it is the way it's done that can make or break the scene in which it's happening. Here, it's literally just characters telling the other characters stuff that they should both already know for the sake of explaining it to the audience. Like Thor explains to us how he's friends with his friends while telling it to them by recounting all the different battles they've already been through that they would already know about because they were fucking there.
My friends, have you forgotten all that we have done together?
Imagine being to your homie like, hey, John, come on, we're pals. Remember when we got blasted by 50 in basketball? Remember when you shit yourself at prom? Remember when you got left back in 6th grade? Nigga, why are you expositioning the stuff that I already know? They explain how the teleportation works. Mind you, these niggas are mad old, and there's no way they don't understand how the Bifrost works. They explain the war to us. They explain Loki's backstory to us. Thor explains to Jane and the crew Asgard and who he is and all of that. It's actually so boring, bro. Don't get me started on the final battle. That shit is straight ass cheeks. Tom Hiddleston as Loki is always a great watch, but because him and Thor are in total different settings for the whole damn movie in this film, it makes their dramatic resolution fall flat because they haven't been seen on screen in the film since the 15th minute mark. The movie is just so boring. It's so forgettable. The New Mexico scenes are attempting to be funny. The movie isn't funny. I hate this movie. It's only D-tier because I know shit like Thor 2 or Captain Marvel is coming, and they're for sure worse. So it stays D-tier. But goddamn, this movie is lucky I didn't put it in F tier. Captain America, B tier. I think Captain America the First Avenger is one of the most overlooked and underrated MCU movies there are. Oh, here go Blank Boy glazing Captain America. Shut the fuck up. The Captain America trilogy commonly gets presented as the three-headed dragon meme, with Winter Soldier and Civil War being glazed to death. And while they are for sure better movies, I don't think that makes this movie a bad movie by any means. And I think there's a strong case for it to be the best MCU origin movie. Iron Man 1 commonly gets that nod, and I just don't see the gap in quality between these two films. I think they're on the same tier, hence they're both B tier. It could be extremely difficult to portray a character like Captain America in an interesting way. It's much easier for audiences to be drawn to a tortured, quippy, heart of gold but doesn't know how to show it character. Your Sasuke Uchiha's, Zuko's, Tony Stark, Batman. What's difficult is making a character who for all intents and purposes is damn near perfect interesting, and I think that's why it's very normal you hear people call someone like Captain America, Superman, Optimus Prime, those sort of characters boring. The thing is though, I'm convinced a lot of you niggas watch the movie in a Stevie Wonder cosplay because the movie goes out of its way to explain the fact that Steve Rogers isn't perfect at all.
Not a perfect soldier, a good man.
We know Steve isn't the perfect person. It's very often that Steve lacks nuance. For him, it's either hero or evil, good or bad, Lil Uzi or French Montana. There's no gray area. He can be very stubborn, which we see firsthand in Civil War. There's a sort of self-righteousness that he carries around that his moral compass is superior to everyone else's. The nigga low-key always right, but it's still a flaw. There's also the fact that without being a soldier, he doesn't know who he is, which we see him struggle with in other movies. Steve isn't perfect. While his flaws might seem minuscule in the large grand scheme of a lot of characters out there is still development that he could go through. But what they do is instead of giving him the typical development arc that is caused from his reaction to the world around him, the writers make Steve Rogers instead influence the world around him with his personal will. For example, after Steve takes the steroids, the military uses him as propaganda machine, where he isn't taken serious at all. Niggas clowning him like he can't do them crazy. And instead of this creating some internal change in Steve, he instead sticks fully to who he is, and when he finds out about Bucky and the other soldiers being kidnapped, he remembers, shit, that nigga Bucky owes me money, and goes to save them. Very commonly, Cap is the one pushing the plot along with who he is, rather than reacting to things happening and changing. The way I see it is characters like Steve Rogers or Superman or Optimus Prime don't change themselves, they change everyone else around them, and that's not boring to me. It's a constant battle of their idealism fighting versus the reality of what the world is. And seeing those different ideologies duel to me is always a fun time. I feel like audiences have gotten so used to a Tony Stark needing to learn selflessness, a Peter Parker needing to learn responsibility, a Hulk needing to learn anger management, a Miles Morales needing to learn a better fucking haircut, that a character with a very sound and strong morals unwilling to shift can come across as flat to them. But I think that resilience in the face of a world constantly trying to make you abandon them is what makes him cool. It's what makes him interesting to me. This is a movie with no character arc. His arc is him fighting to not compromise who he is. That is the arc. And I can understand how that's very atypical of what you come to expect for these sort of movies. I understand how that could come across as boring to some people, but for me it's not. That's awesome. It does, however, give me a lot less character analysis to give, because unlike Iron Man 1, I can't go on for 80 minutes about the process behind his change. We kind of know who Captain America is as a character, and that's just who he is. So instead, we're gonna get into Chris Evans' performance. Despite him starring in straight 37% Rotten Tomato movies these days, he was really in his bag playing Steve Rogers. The ability for Chris Evans to capture the essence of what Captain America is truly great. He really gets across the fact that this man is courageous, good, loyal, idealistic.
I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from.
Chris Evans owns the role so well, I'd be convinced he's never done a bad thing in his life. Type of nigga to apologize for sneezing too loud. The romance is also a strong suit of this movie. The chemistry between Peggy and Steve is really good. And what I appreciate is it doesn't stem from him after he gets swole. She didn't switch up. You can see that she liked him for him even before the nigga became 6 foot, even back when he was built like SpongeBob SquarePants. And I really appreciate that because it makes it feel more genuine. Like any story I've ever seen where Lois doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman and she's dating Superman, I always hate those. I feel like she should like Clark Kent. That's who he is. Peggy here really admires the intimate goodness, bravery, and integrity, and it works because they both contain a strong sense of integrity, hence why they both joined the military. And I think that draws them together, and it's good to see. Their final conversation about planning their date while he's getting ready to Hannah Baker himself was heartbreaking. The action in this movie is of course great. Captain America boxes, unlike Iron Man, and that's my preference of action. I want to see dudes kickboxing, doing triple spin kicks that are not humanly possible.
Give it to me! Give it to me! Just give it!
The weak point of this movie for me is, again, the villain. The MCU just could not make a good villain at this point in the franchise, huh? And, you know, going into these movies, I remember hearing the criticism about Phase 1 villains, but I hadn't seen these movies in forever, but rewatching them, yeah, Phase 1 villains were mid. Red Skull is the most one-dimensional nigga ever. There's no nuance to him. His evil is absolute, often lacking the moral complexity, charisma that an interesting villain would have. And you know, the all-out bad, nothing good about them villain can work. Look in the case of someone like Frieza. Frieza is just an evil lesbian, but it works because he's extremely terrifying, intimidating, and charismatic. Red Skull lacks all of that. So then it just ends up being this chop dude hiding behind all his soldiers who for the first time had to see Cap 1v1 and got his shit dropped off. I actually like the visuals in this movie. The way the movie's directed so that it really gives off the vibe of an older time period is dope. And they also are traveling from battle to battle and we get to see different action set pieces. It's cool. I do think the film has a pacing issue kinda similar to Iron Man 1, where to start, you get a nicely crafted character study movie, and then it goes into a generic formulaic superhero movie and its war montages. They literally skip over super important battles to the plot and just instead show slideshows, and so you come out of it not knowing much about what exactly happened, except that the Americans have turned the tide in the war because of Captain America. That's really it. They gloss over it, which in the context of the story seems really important. I would have liked for them to get way more into the events going on or continue staying locked in on the character study format the film was going with for the first hour or so, but they kind of just do neither in the second half. So after they lay all the bricks of Steve Rogers' character, they like, yeah, niggas, war happened, skip over all that, and then the final act happens mad fast. Swear it went from montage to Bucky's death to slight character work to then killing Red Skull and the movie's done. So with the predictable plot, weak villain, pacing issues, and if you don't see Cap as an interesting character because he doesn't go from egomaniac to selfless or from straight to gay, there's no change, I can understand why some people might not like this movie. I get it. But for me, it's up there with the best origin movie in the MCU, and I think it being right there with Iron Man 1 is fair. Very similar quality movies to me. Avengers 2012, S tier. The first S tier movie on the list. I mean, Avengers 1 is so peak. This movie was revolutionary, and not in the way that John Morant calls himself revolutionary. The first ever part-time NBA player, part-time gangbanger isn't something to be proud of. This was the first time we had seen a big blockbuster movie take separate characters from separate movies and bring them all together for one big epic movie, and they nailed it. Which, as we know, isn't easy to do. I mean, just look at the DCU's Justice League movie.
That shit is fucking trash, dog. Get the fuck off the airwaves.
And that right there is the biggest strength of this movie. What makes this movie so great isn't its humor necessarily. While there are some funny moments, the "he's behind me, isn't he" corny lines aren't the strength of the movie. The biggest strength isn't the characterization and development of characters, which I do hear a common complaint with, but it's almost like each of these niggas got their own solo movie right before. I just want to go up to people with that criticism like,
"Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?"
The biggest strength of this movie is the character dynamics and interactions. The heart of this movie, and the MCU really, being Tony and Cap, who bounce off of each other perfectly. There's of course that scene where they're arguing with one another and they're completely wrong about each other, but using their preconceived notions to label one another. Cap tells Tony he's not the one to lay down for the team and make the winning play, also called that nigga broke. Me personally, Tony, I'm not going for that. And we of course see later on in this very movie Tony sacrifice himself, as well as sacrifice himself 13 other times in the MCU. And you got Tony who tells Cap that everything special about him came out of a bottle, and that his dick is little. Two things that I can 100% for certainty guarantee are not true. Steve was given the serum because of the kind of person he was. He was special, no Ed. Way before the serum, they literally gave it to John Walker and he's still a trash ass nigga. It's like they say, no amount of money can unlame you. It's really interesting for basically the entire movie to see the two of them react to the exact same situations, but very differently. It's like how we all have ears and are hearing the exact same thing, but somehow people like Lil Pump. Take Agent Coulson's death for example. It really affects Tony. Meanwhile, Cap is more so like,
But anywho,
when we gonna get to slamming out Loki? Gotta get back, soldiers die, it happens. And while these differences may work to cause internal conflict between the two of them because they want to go about and approach things differently, it's also what works to make them such a great team. Because what he lacks, I have, and what I lack, he has. If we baking a cake, someone gotta bring the flour, someone gotta bring the sugar, and nobody better bring no fucking whipped cream. That's way too sweet, you ruining the cake. You a grown ass man wanting white stuff all over your lip. What's wrong with you? I'm obviously focusing a lot on Tony and Cap, but there's a lot of other character dynamics that are really good, like Natasha and Clint, whose relationship gets a lot of shine in this movie. You get to see how close of friends they are and how much they truly care for one another. Through dialogue, you get backstory of their friendship and things they encountered. Niggas knew not to give them solo movies beforehand, would have been the first MCU films to sell 0 tickets. Only Cap, Tony, Hulk, and Thor were interesting enough to receive their own, so Hawkeye and Black Widow get some time in these movies to flesh out a little bit. Thor kinda gets to interact with each Avenger equally, and it's fun to see how they all react to a god talking like a Shakespearean nigga. Where art thou, Loki? They told Thor he was in charge of the ox and that nigga started playing. The biggest relationship for Thor in this movie though being with Loki. That brother/enemy relationship is always great to see on screen. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston's chemistry is perfect every time. The action in the MCU definitely gets better later on, but even from an older movie standpoint, it still holds up really great. I also like how they didn't shy away from the Avengers fighting each other, cause those are the type of things you always wonder in superhero team-up movies and stuff. Cap versus Thor versus Iron Man was sick in the beginning of the movie. Shit had me wanting more.
Tired of getting the taste of them. I want the whole load.
We get to see how truly terrifying Hulk is when he's mind controlled, chasing after Black Widow, which then leads into Hulk versus Thor, which was epic. Got to see a glimpse into who is the truly strongest Avenger. We get to see Natasha and Clint fighting, going band for band in the Who's the Most Useless Avengers competition. And of course, the final battle scene is one of the best action set pieces the MCU has put together to date. Just art on my screen, and nah, I'm not talking about that bullshit Picasso be out there making. The way the battle just so seamlessly flows from hero to hero, all with different tasks, using their different advantages in this battle to work together, it really is great. The pacing is good, the movie doesn't need much buildup because we already know these characters, so the only real setup is the conflict of Loki leading into the final showdown, and it never feels too fast or too slow. Everything has a natural progression to it that makes sense. One of my only complaints, I guess, besides the fact that Captain America's suit is trash, is that this movie does kind of look like a TV show. Some of the effects are dated, which I expect. This is a 14-year-old movie, that's okay. As long as it's not fucking Game Boy graphics, I understand that. But they filmed the movie in full screen for some reason, so it's slightly jarring to look at, but it ain't that serious for real. And one last thing I want to mention about this movie, about how amazing it is that even while being a team-up movie, it still works as a standalone movie, which is a really impressive feat. Nowadays, they can't even make Black Panther 3 without you having to see Captain Marvel 1. What the fuck do those two movies have to do with one another? But here, they introduce us to each hero through recruitment scenes that all get to characterize them a little bit. Bruce Banner being in a remote location to hide from the public because he can't handle the Knicks losing, shit finna turn him into the Hulk every night, and now everybody day ruined. Cap boxing in a gym alone while giving us little nuggets about his struggle to adjust to modern day life. He's still trying to get that racism out his system, out his heart, and etc, etc. It's all just done really well. This movie's peak.